Hi, I'm Gerard Virga, and welcome to season one, episode 8 of the Florida Family Law Attorney podcast. And today we're going to be interviewing somebody I really wanted to catch up with and get on here. Kuryn Wheeler is a behavior analyst. She's a person that works tirelessly in our community, bringing attention to causes such as autism, children that are on the spectrum, and other behavioral issues with children. Corinne is often seen on the news. She's always promoting some event or charity event for these children and to call as much awareness to these issues as possible. And she's been nice enough today to give us time to explain some of these issues and how they affect family law and what's going on in our community regarding them. So, Corinne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been working in this field my whole life, pretty much. My mom was a behavior technician when I was a kid. And so I was used kind of to do social skills with her clients when I was a kid. This was prior to insurance even really covering these specialized services. So I've always grown up with a heart for individuals diagnosed with autism. Because I started with her at such a young age, I was able to see all the struggles that they face throughout their whole lifespan, pretty much, from a young child to an adult. So it's been interesting to see how I can fit myself into helping them and how I can provide support services in the community as well. I became a behavioral analyst in 2020 in the height of the pandemic, actually. I opened my clinic, and that goes to show how much of a need there was for consistency for these children during that time because it just blew up from there. Started with 2 clients and now we're at 40. So
Wow.
with a wait list. So within 5 years, we have really blown up in the community, and there's just such a need for it. There's not enough providers out there. There's not enough resources out there. So we try and provide what we can. We try and provide high quality services to our clients and to our students at the school. So we do have Gulf Coast School for Autism and Gulf Coast Autism Clinic. So together we make up the Connect program. The school works on the educational goals of the students, and then the clinic works on the behavioral health goals. And together we connect the pieces and provide an awesome resource for the kids in this community. From the family law perspective, individuals with autism, they have a lot harder time processing hard emotions like divorce and like dealing with parents' divorce. So I think it's super important that we come on here and talk about this, especially during World Autism Month. Autism is in the news a lot right now. We have a
Yes,
lot
it
of people
is.
making comments about it. And there's parents that are on both sides of the aisle of if they like where things are going or if they don't like where things are going. But what we need to focus on at the end of the day, too, is continuing to provide support and resources for the children that are already diagnosed. So
Right.
that's really what we focus on at our clinic and at our school, and just keeping it positive and being a light for the community and providing the resources. But most importantly, the new CDC numbers just came out on autism, and 1 in 31 children will be diagnosed with autism. It
If you
is
don't mind me asking, Corinne, what was
mhm,
the old number? Is it going up or is it going down?
it was 1 in 36 in 2022. So
So
within
it's
the last
increasing.
3 years, it has increased to 1 in 31. In the state of California, which I'm assuming where they did more of the research at for more of the assessments at for this particular study by the CDC, 1 in 12 and a half children will be diagnosed with autism. So it'll also be interesting to see what the numbers are in general for developmental disabilities that are coming out, because those are extremely high. It's in the single digits, 1 in 8 or 1 in 9, around there, it was previously. So that'll be another number that we're going to be keeping an eye on, because that covers your ADHD, your ODD, just all the different range of developmental disabilities. So,
Can I ask a
um,
question here? It's a maybe a lawyer type question. Based on like your training, experience, and education in this field,
mhm.
and what you've read, and you may know and you may not know, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you think it's more actual frequent or do you think it's just more identified today?
So that's kind of the biggest debate within the field, too. Obviously, aside from what causes autism, it's really hard to say because there's just not enough data on it.
Right.
we've really cracked down, even within the education system, we're assessing kids more thoroughly for reading disabilities, math disabilities, things like that. We're providing more support services. So it's hard to say really which one it's because of, but there definitely needs to be research provided for both ways, whether it is environmental or whether it is genetic or whether it is because we're just screening earlier and everything else.
I know
I
that
will
in
say that.
my time as a family law attorney, I started to hear the term on the spectrum a lot more, that, maybe understanding that it's a range, you know,
Right.
when was the spectrum or the diagnosis of autism, when was it really first on the scene and recognized as an issue or a medical issue? Do you know, like, when it first
So
was
I believe it's
identified?
been around since the 40s or 50s, but major strides were made in around 2019, 2020, when the Diagnostic Statistical Manual changed the DSM,
Hmm.
changed the criteria for autism. So they actually gave it 3 levels so that we could kind of categorize the levels of support that a child needs. So
Is the 3 levels what they refer to as the spectrum, like, on what you would need, or does it correlate to the spectrum?
So the spectrum more or less is the range of disabilities or range of behaviors that categorize autism. The levels of autism more or less categorize the amount of support that the child will need or the
Okay,
individual will need. So based on if they're a level 1, 2, or 3 may determine if they're more profound and are going to need more intensive support, or what was previously known as Asperger's would be, maybe a level 1 where they're not needing as much support.
understood.
Yeah.
Like you said, 2019, 2020. That seems like where in my practice, started to hear a lot more about it. It was becoming much more prevalent. It's become
Mhm.
much more prevalent throughout the years, and of course, I see more and more cases,
Right.
that have, these issues arising,
Mhm.
and where we have cases where we're not only making decisions about which school to go to, but we're making decisions about which treatment plan, which clinic,
Right.
which behavior analyst, is going to be
Occupational
involved.
therapy, speech therapy,
Yes.
physical therapy.
Yeah, and
There's a lot
those
of
are all
therapies
things,
out there.
you know, you take your regular parenting issues and decision making that you already have, and now we're adding all these other levels of decision making. And then you have people, in the divorce case, parents or people just, they're not getting along potentially, or they think that this analyst or this favors one of the other parents and
Mhm.
the like. And, then there's sometimes fighting over, okay, I don't want to use her therapist. I want to use my therapist, and
Right.
we try very hard to work past that. And
Absolutely.
the law is really focused on, and the best interest of the child should be the center of all the decisions. And then,
Easier
sometimes
said than
family law.
done,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I know that better than most. I think that,
Yeah.
easier said than done sometimes, and it
Yeah.
requires a lot of convincing. But, I think it's paramount for lawyers and family law attorneys especially to really start to look at this and understand it in more detail, because when I'm drafting up a parenting plan or a proposal, or I'm trying to give my client the best advice and guidance I can to understand these issues, and to really, have people like you in the community that we can call upon to get some insights on
Right.
how to handle these issues, and break these log jams between the parents, perhaps, and come up with creative solutions that really serve the best interest of the children, who are not only caught in the middle, but if they're having some sort of a processing issue, how do we help with that too? How do we help ease this for them, this transition? So, Corinne, one of the questions I would want to ask you, and been dying to ask you as a family law attorney, if you could tell me one thing about cases that involve children with autism, children that are on the spectrum somewhere, children with behavioral issues, what would you want me to know? What would you want to tell me? What would you want to always be whispering in my ear as I'm working with these cases?
That they need more support than just the parents in this case. That no matter the child, I feel like they need outside support anyways, whether that be a church or, another family member, an unbiased ear. But especially in these cases with individuals diagnosed with autism, they really need a support team that can break down what's going on for them. We talk a lot about how challenging change can be for individuals diagnosed with autism, and it can be especially challenging during an emotional time like divorce. So, the biggest thing that I have found throughout my career that helps children on the spectrum and many other children as well are a strategy we use called social stories. And a social story or social narrative basically is a visual guide as to what's going to happen. So if you can prepare the child as much as possible for if there's going to be an upcoming change, such as mommy usually picks you up on Thursday, but now daddy's going to pick you up on Thursday, or grandma usually picks you up, now dad's going to pick you up. Something along those lines where they have a heads up as to what's going to happen within the environment. I'm speaking on this soon at a conference. And what I say is, it's like if you were invited to go to a job interview and they just said, be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow, you're going to have a million and one things that are going in your head that are going to make you so anxious for that job interview because you have no other details. But if you had the details of you're going to have a job interview tomorrow at 9 a.m. with Kuryn Wheeler, dress is professional because you will not be expected to start working right away. You can park at the back side of the building and someone will let you in at the door that's labeled office. There's a huge difference between those scenarios with how you are going to feel with your confidence going into them. So if we can prepare the children as much as possible in advance before these changes start happening, because the changes will be inevitable in the case of family law. So if we can prepare them as much as possible, then we will have more success in the situations. So the biggest thing that they need is the support system that can help prepare them for that.
Okay. So like these social stories, they're like picture boards. Is that how you would do it?
Yeah. So the cool thing about social stories is you can customize them to whatever level the kid is on. So if they really like a certain character and they really resonate with that character, like some of our kids will make the same sounds that like a cartoon character does, then you can use that character within the social story and you can say, this character usually gets picked up by mommy on Thursdays, but now this character is going to have dad pick up on Thursdays, and they're just having a visual, and then you can keep going through the story, and as you get to the end you can say Johnny, just like this character, is now going to be picked up by daddy on Thursdays. Johnny is a good boy and daddy will be very excited to see Johnny when he picks him up from school on Thursday. So just, making it as positive as possible, but in a way where it's clear, concise, to the point, but customized to that child's likings or to that child's interests.
So it's a combination of written word and picture.
Yes, combination.
So you just be writing your own little books.
Exactly. It's like your own little books. And there are people out there, online that will customize them for you. You just tell them the situation, the case, but that's part of what we do at my clinic to prepare children for so many different things throughout their lives. We've done them on going to the dentist, going to the doctor, interacting with police officers, getting a surgery. That was the coolest case that I've ever had because the doctor was actually involved with me in reading the social story to the kid. And this is a
That's
kid that
wonderful.
there's no way he ever would have been able to get this surgery. But because he knew everything that was coming, because he was completely prepared, we did a walkthrough of the waiting room. We watched videos. You can incorporate that too, videos. There's so many resources out there that you can incorporate, but he was successfully able to get the surgery. And we even went as far to say, this is how you are going to feel because it was a tonsillectomy. This is how you will feel after the surgery. This is what's important for you to do. And this is a kid that he can't have a full conversation with you or I. He's
Right.
very prompted to have any conversations or anything. And the surgery was a super success because of social stories. So we've even done them as far as, a loved one passing away. because they have a difficult time understanding those emotional things like that. So it really helps with social stories to prepare them for a variety of different things in life.
As a parent, our 8-year-old had a tonsillectomy, and thinking to that, that's a really great point because it's hard to explain to even an 8-year-old, what's going to happen, and that this is pain's going to pass, and
Yeah.
this is going to be worth it in the long run, much less compound it with someone who's not communicating in the normal fashion with you and having to break that down and make them understand, what they're facing. That's
Right.
really, really some deep stuff and very commendable that you were able to make that kind of impact on the child's life, and commendable for the doctor who also took the time
Yeah, it was really
to,
cool.
yeah, to
It really opened my eyes to how much social stories work because there is no way this kid would have been able to get the surgery that successfully had we not done such a collaborative measure with all of that. So, I think in your field, in the field of first responders, in the field of parents, teachers, the social stories really can help all, but it's all about the collaboration. And that's what parents need to keep in mind when they're going through, a divorce is that the more collaborative you are, the more you keep your child's interests in mind, the more successful the whole situation is going to be for everyone and the less stressful.
let me ask you this. I mean, it would require, some lawyers to, if both parents have lawyers, it definitely
Mhm.
requires some coordination so that everybody views the story as fair.
Right.
Have you ever had a situation where the two parents or two attorneys have reached out and asked you to make a social story to explain the new parenting plan, or explain that the parents won't be living together anymore? Or is this something you've seen in action, or is this something kind of new?
We haven't had attorneys reach out before, but we have had parents. And
Mhm.
luckily, in the past, when we have had the parents, they've been collaborative on the same page. Because typically, by the time they come to us with something like that, because a lot of them try and keep, these issues more private, even though we need to know about them. They will
Right.
affect the child's behavior in the long run, and we're
Absolutely.
there to help them and the child. So, we need to know about them. We've had success in the past with the parents being collaborative and working with all of us. There may be a matter of, I don't want that one sentence in there or something, and we go back and forth. Can we reword it or, whatever?
Right.
But typically, with the successes of our clients and our students in our school, we're all on board to provide what's best for the child. At our school specifically, we require parents to provide transportation, we require parents to provide lunches for their child. So there's a little bit of additional buy in to be a part of our school. And also with our clinic, which is a large part of our school as well, parents have to participate, caregivers have to participate in the services. Otherwise, insurance will not continue to pay for them.
Can I ask a question there?
Absolutely.
One of the things, I foresee or see coming up from time to time is we have parents who have shared parental responsibility. They're both supposed to be involved in the medical decisions, educational decisions, all those major decisions that go along with
Right.
parenting. In a household where the parents are going through a divorce or they're already divorced, how does that work with the insurance? Do both parents have to be involved and one of the parents have to be involved? Or is there certain requirements for your school and clinic that you guys mandate? Can you tell us a little bit about the requirements, on how parents who are not in an intact marriage or family anymore need to handle this?
So, unfortunately, with our clinic, what we see is that both parents, not all the time, but in cases like this, both parents don't decide to get involved until there is an issue. So,
Right,
it can definitely be challenging navigating that when we've dealt with parent A throughout the
right,
whole treatment process, and then suddenly parent B comes in out of nowhere. But we are here to help the child. So if what is going on between parent A and B is going to affect the behaviors of the child, then we're going to have to collaborate with both of them. From a legal standpoint, obviously, we're going to require whatever the courts are telling us to go by. And that's the point that I personally, as a business owner, would consult with a lawyer to make sure to read through those documents and make sure that we are following them to a T. But from a compassionate services standpoint, obviously we want both caregivers to be involved in each child's treatment, because the child is only with us from, let's say, 8 to 3 or 7:30 to 3:30 Monday through Friday. We're closed for Christmas break. We're closed, a week before summertime starts. So there's times where we're going to be closed and parents are going to have to work together to provide what their child needs. They're going to have to collaborate to make sure that their child's taken care of. And whatever they do during that time is going to determine the child's success when they come back after that break, too. So they truly do both need to be involved, because we all need to be on the same page. Obviously easier said than done, but we just try and approach it from the standpoint of, we are here for your child. Whatever quarrel you guys have going on, we want to be a help for your child. So whatever you need from us to make sure that your child is prepared for this challenging situation, to make sure that we don't have a heavy increase in target behaviors, to make sure that we keep getting success from the client and we don't put them back, then that's what we're here to do. From an educational standpoint, only one parent is required to be on the documentation. It's a little easier from that sense for one parent to request records. But obviously, if, parent B gets a record request sent to us and the courts rule that we have to provide the records request, then we do have to provide the request. So it really just depends on who's on the paperwork and what their court documents say as to what we are required to do from our end.
Okay. Well, one of the things that one of my questions I have is the behavioral clinic and your services under insurance, they fall under mental health. Is that correct? Am I
That's
understanding that right?
correct. Yes.
Because there are
Yes.
certain, shared responsibility rules that govern mental health treatment that, unless the court order states otherwise, that only one parent can enroll the child or get the
Mhm.
services of a mental health professional. So you're considered a mental health professional.
We are considered mental health professionals. And I would say that that would have to be looked at with the wording, kind of, because although we fall, let's say, under the APA, the American Psychological Association of Mental Health Professional, sometimes in states that license behavior analysts individually, they fall under a separate field of behavioral analysis. Because when you are looking at mental health, they provide a service that deals with constructs. So things that aren't physically present, may not be environmental, things that are going on within the psychological aspect. But with behavioral analysis, we only look at the things that we can see. So we only look at the environment and what the parents are doing and what the child is doing. We don't jump into their heads, in a sense, and see what their mental processes are. So
Right.
we do fall under mental health in the APA, but each state could individually say, no, they're a separate field or a separate service provider type.
And it sounds to me that even if your state or the law would allow it, you need buy-in from both parents, especially if the child's going between households, because there needs to be some consistency and both the parents need to be on the same behavior plan that you've worked out, in targeting those behaviors and trying to ease this transition on the child. Is that right?
Right. And, if you are changing around things that you've now set in place, if parent A comes out of nowhere and decides, "Oh no, I want to have my weekends free," or whatever, that's got to be explained to the child. So you need to make sure first that you go through all the legal routes to say, set in stone, this is the schedule we are going to have. And then you need to prepare the child that there's going to be a change, because it's if you've told them this is the way it's going to be, it's not fair for that child to then suddenly not have it that way when you've worked so hard to prepare them for it. We've worked so hard to prepare them for it. They are, we've reduce those target behaviors because we've just kept chugging along with the expected schedule. And then, if it's going to change, the child needs to be notified.
Well, one of the things I was going to ask you, that's been on my mind, because I think there's just a lot of misconceptions about autism and being on the spectrum and what that really means. What are some of the most common misconceptions about autism or being on the spectrum that you've ran into in your profession? And can you help us dispel some of those today for our listeners?
Yeah, that's a great question because my sister-in-law actually just had a really in-depth conversation about this with me yesterday, because she's a behavior technician as well. The biggest thing is that these kids comprehend everything that you are saying. Whether they are profound autism nonverbal, they are still processing all of your words. So especially from the case of family law and divorce, if you are talking about these things in front of your child, I don't care if they're nonverbal, they are understanding what you are saying. So that's the biggest misconception, that just because they can't talk means they're not understanding. That is not true whatsoever. So knowing that parents need to speak in private about these issues, and they need to show in front of the child that they are on the same page and that they have a plan and they have it figured out what is going on, because the children are looking to them for consistency, and they're looking to them to provide the expectations and the scheduling. And so parents just need to be very cautious about what they're talking about in front of these children or these individuals in general. We've had kids come in and say the wildest things out of nowhere. I mean, you have a nonverbal kid come in and they say something completely off the wall, and we're like, wait a minute, where did that come from? We
Right.
can't get you to say cookie or juice, but that whatever you just said clearly made an impact on you.
There's
So
a window into what's going on in the outside world coming through.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So we hear some wild stuff, but that's the biggest misconception, is that they're not understanding what we're saying, and they truly are. They may process it a little bit slower. The output may not be there as prevalently, but the input, they are taking in everything in their environment and attempting to process it in some way.
Well, one of the things, my wife used to work with you.
Mhm.
And, one of the things that always, stuck out in my mind and I still think about from time to time is she, said that there was a child who read a book over and over and over and over in the corner. It was a music book
Mhm.
and, had notes and music and different instruments. And that was his favorite book. And she said he would go to the corner and read the book every time he got free time in class.
Mhm.
And then there was a band that came in and played at your school, and that when nobody was looking, he ran up on the stage and started like playing all these different instruments,
Yeah.
and that he never had any lessons. He had just picked it up from reading the book over and over. And I do think that, in our society, we if you're talking, if you're loud, if it's the squeaky wheel gets the attention, and we think that just because you're talking that you're knowledgeable.
Right.
But often, I find in my life, the older I get, the person who has, said nothing and is quiet is often the person who has the greatest insight, or the one who's really thinking and digesting and comprehending everything that's going on. So that's
Yeah,
kind of,
and that's a great description of autism. They're processing everything, and I always say that, autism is an ability actually where they're able to tap into a different part of their brains than we are. And if you can find that niche that these kids are good at, or that they really just enjoy, then you can give them some sense of confidence, some sense of success, in their own eyes. And that's what we really try and do at our school, is just finding what they're good at and owning in on it and finding what they enjoy. Because, this life, there's no box for all of us to fit in. There's no box that says we all have to go to school, or that we all have to go towards certain career tracks. That's the wonderful thing about living where we do, is that we have the freedom to choose what our future consists of. So with these children, we work really hard to find what they're going to enjoy out of this life after they leave our doors.
you know, just touching on those topics of not being nonverbal and the processing. It reminds me of a TED Talk I watched. It was a young gentleman. Many people kind of compare this guy to the next Einstein.
Hmm.
He was a high schooler and getting his PhD in some kind of a mathematics and physics. Well above my understanding. Okay,
Right.
he was obviously smarter than I was or will ever be. And he didn't talk for the first several years of his life. And he was talking about Einstein as well, was nonverbal for I think until he was like 3, much later,
Hmm.
he was late in developing those verbal skills.
Right.
And now that he had developed the verbal skills, he explained that this young kid was explaining that he would just look at like like light coming through the window. He said, I was fascinated with light,
Hmm.
and he would sit there and just analyze every aspect of the light, how it broke down through a spectrum. And he was talking about how he was processing these things and how he saw the world, even though he didn't obviously articulate it. That was not his focus. His
Right.
focus was on processing what he was seeing and what was going on around him. And that, if you think about it, if you're processing at a super high level and you're that ultra focused on the world around you,
Hmm.
and the insights that you garner, whether they be from observing people or in this kid's case, observing light, there's a level of observation perhaps that we cannot comprehend on our level
Absolutely.
that they are gifted enough to understand or to comprehend at that level. And he went on, he talked about like Newton. Newton was not known for being a social butterfly.
Hmm.
In fact, I think it was like during the plague, everyone evacuated the school but him.
Yeah.
And he did most of his discoveries while he was alone and was not a real socializer and didn't really like being around people or articulating those things. He preferred his observations and being left alone to make those observations and not being distracted. And it's very fascinating when you talked about the unlocked portions of the brain or the different areas of the brain and how little we really probably even understand about that. That that there are levels and parts of it that are completely foreign to us and are just now kind of beginning to understand how they may interplay or what they may do or how all this fits together. And I think it's important for my the older I get, the more experience I get in life, showing respect for things that you truly do not understand, instead of being put off by or scared of, things that you don't understand. It's I think it comes with maturity, and it comes with maybe a little greater understanding that those things just require a lot more respect, and that there are just mysteries of the universe or things that to you are foreign. And it doesn't mean that they have to scare you. It doesn't mean that you have to be put off by them or anything else.
Right.
You need to show it the
Or even
respect.
comprehend all of the elements of them,
Yeah, yeah.
comprehend
There's the older I
all the
get,
whys.
the older I get, that I learn every day how little I truly know and how
Yeah.
much more there is still for me to learn. And
And that's
life is
why I'm so thankful for my upbringing, starting at such a young age, getting to be around these kids, because I'm just fascinated by what they're able to do that I'm not able to do. And my heart breaks for the struggles that they face. Every kid that I've worked with throughout the years, the individual specifically that I grew up with around Prague and here in Alabama, his mom is an author in the autism community now. Amazing woman. She was like a second mother to me as I was growing up with him. He was just a brother to me, a friend to me. The whole family was. And I never even really understood that special needs was looked at differently throughout my life because it was just Prague, it was just the kids that were around us. It wasn't anything. And if they were struggling, I was there to say, "Hey, we got this. Come on, let's get through this together." And that has helped me be such a light for individuals nowadays and such an advocate for them more than anything because I've been able to see those struggles from day one with him and see how exciting those successes are. So I'm so appreciative for that. And that's how I'm raising my children as well.
all
They will tolerate, they will be involved. My son goes to all of our school functions. He's going to be around it and he's going to encounter it and he's going to embrace it in all the same ways that I did. And I hope that more parents can expose their children to that as well. Um, I see a lot on Facebook those stories of I invited my son's whole class to his birthday party autistic sons and I got no RSVPs. Are there any kids that are willing to come to? We get messages all the time, actually, of people in the community that are facing that situation. And it's just really, it really goes to show we need more awareness out there because these are the kids that need the neurotypical kids to be around them. These are the kids that need extra support, extra encouragement, extra love more than anything. And I have a really cool story about a kid that I had when they were 3 or 4 years old. And the mom just posted the most inspiring thing to me that, her daughter didn't get a sweet six, probably a level 2 autism, but needs pretty substantial support. And that's tough as a parent. A mom looks forward to throwing their daughter a sweet 16, but they took her to a go-kart track instead and let her drive a go-kart for the first time. They coordinated it with the go-kart place and everything, and that just warmed my heart to see the support of the go-kart place, in the community because she was running into everything.
Right.
I saw the videos, but like
Hey, hey, hey,
teenagers
hey, hey, hey,
do.
let's I just I have a daughter who turned 16
Yeah.
and we've been learning how to drive. We haven't ran into everything, but to all parents out there who have children who are about to turn 16 and are, whether you're learning to drive a goat kart or you're learning to drive a car or wherever you are in your progression, my heart and hat goes off to all parents and in that
Yeah.
situation because letting go of that control
Mhm.
and seeing your child drive the goat kart
Yep.
or the car,
Yep.
or even this morning as I'm pulling out the driveway and I'm seeing another car, realizing that, as a parent, we want that control.
Mhm.
We want to protect. And, I think all parents struggle with, whether they're going through divorce or an intact marriage, they're dealing with a child with special needs, is letting go of that control, whether it's in a divorce case, trusting your co parent and
Mhm.
understanding that you can't have total control.
Right.
Or if you're putting them on the go kart track, you're letting go
Mhm.
of control,
Yeah.
or the car, or any of the life's ventures. And it's so hard, and I think it's such an instinct in every parent to want
Mhm.
the control, to protect,
Yeah.
and trying to let go. And I find as a family law attorney, often, stating, she was your wife or he was your husband. At one point, you guys loved each other. You loved each other enough to have a child together. They don't normally, in normal situations, there are outliers. The other
Mhm.
parent does not want to harm or see harm come to the
Right.
child. They may not parent 100% of the way you would have,
Right.
but even if you stayed married, no two parents would parent 100%
No.
of the way. There's always disagreements and even healthy
Mhm.
marriages
Yep.
about parenting
Yeah.
and how to handle
'Cause it's
situations. And
emotional.
yeah,
It's an, emotional situation, that's your baby.
yeah,
It's
we,
emotional from both parent sides, so there's going to be challenges within it no matter what, and I think, you describing that as control is definitely what it is, and a lot of times too, these kids will surprise you. They'll surprise us, we're around them Monday through Friday every day. We just had an alligator that we bring in every year. A zoologist brings in an
oh,
alligator for our kids to see and pet. It's part of our STEM program for the hands-on science portion.
right.
And we had a mom who was picking up from school and she was like, he didn't touch the gator today, didn't he? And we were like, what? No, he was rubbing the gator all over, all the way down to the tail. He was feeling the fingernails. And at the end, he insisted on getting on top of the gator and riding it. And the mom was like, what? No way. She said, he hates animals. And we were like, no, but we didn't go in with those preconceived notions of he's scared of animals. I think the same could be said with divorce. Don't go in with these preconceived notions that everything is going to fit perfectly in this box or that you are going to get everything you want with it. It's got to be a let's talk about it. Let's see how the situation goes. Maybe we need to make some adjustments based on what's in the best interest of our child, but let's work together collaboratively to make sure they're successful.
Well, one of the things as a family law attorney, I think that, I've picked up on throughout the years are Our children are often a mirror of us.
Mhm.
If you're upset about this, when they're with you, they're going to mirror your behavior. They're going to mirror your outrage. When they're with the other parent, if they're excited about something, they're going to mirror the behavior that they're excited about the same thing that they were acting like they were upset about to mirror you because children are trying to please you. And then whatever your emotions are or your preconceived preconceptions about the situation honestly rub off on and affect the child. And, in
Absolutely.
our shared parenting, rules that that have been passed around throughout the years in our surrogate, one of the things that it says is always look happy at drop off. Do
Mhm.
not go to drop off with a crying,
Sets the tone for the
frowny,
day.
sad face because the children ultimately mirror. And it makes me kind of wonder about the alligator scenario.
Mhm.
If mom thinks you don't like the animals and she has lived her life and the household that way, how much of it is mirroring just to please mom? And
Right.
in family law we get into a lot of messes where the kids are telling each parent, each household, what they want to hear,
Mhm.
and then before we know it the parents are now not getting along.
Mhm.
And then when we get to the bottom of it, unfortunately, a very costly bottom emotionally and financially, that maybe a social investigator or mental health professional just comes back with I hate to say it, the obvious answer that
Mhm.
they're telling both of you what you want to hear,
Right.
as opposed to what they really want. And the
Right.
answer is they don't want what mom wants, they don't want what dad wants. They really want
Mhm.
something totally different, but they're
Right.
also don't want to get caught in the middle and they want to please you. So
Mhm.
let me ask you this, like, as these diagnoses become more frequent, as you pointed out,
Mhm.
as family law issues are going to inevitably touch these families and these children, what opportunities would there be to collaborate with someone like you or your clinic or your school as a family law attorney, or as a to maybe like review a parenting plan, to give insights on how to how to set up the transitions, maybe the exchanges in a more productive way, or schedules based on a child's behaviors. Like we have a standard parenting plan, right? And I tell people
Mhm.
one of the great things maybe about having an attorney is I joke around. I said, think of it like a tailor.
Mhm.
You can go to J.C. Penney's and get well, I don't know about J.C. Penney's anymore, but you go to Dillard's and you can get a suit off the rack, okay? And it might fit, and it might not be super comfortable. Sleeves might be too long, might be a little tight in the waist.
Right.
If you have a lawyer and the lawyer, will take the time with you and you develop that relationship and you build enough insights about this family, I think of it kind of as my goal to tailor that suit to fit your
Yeah.
family the best I can, whether it's certain holidays, how people want to handle, Christmas. Maybe you want to split Christmas down the middle. Maybe this family, wants to have, mom even, dad odd for Christmas. But I can go through each of those things and try to make an agreement that serves the best interests of the family, the best interests of the children, hopefully an agreement that sticks too for the duration of the children's minority. But it would be great to have some insights from professionals like you
Right.
on how to develop a parenting plan that deals with certain behavioral issues
Right.
so that we're keeping the treatment consistent,
Mhm.
we're not having problems with getting the treatments facilitated,
Mhm.
and that we're setting this kid up for success and this family up
Yeah.
for success. So what opportunities would there be to collaborate with people in your field?
So I think the biggest thing about what you just said is that we have to have the full picture. Collaboration has to take place from all parties involved. We need to know what parents are thinking prior to being able to help the child, with what's going on. We have to know what's going on with them. I think social stories are a huge, huge benefit for families, no matter what level the kid is on. If you have a really intelligent verbal kid, who maybe just has a little bit of challenges with behaviors, a social story can still benefit them for sure. It can still provide an expectation of what the outcomes are going to be. So, no matter what end of the spectrum or what level the child is on, I think a social story is a big, big element of, helping a child, any child. I think that, the behavior parameters that we set in place through our teaching plans with ABA need to be used in both households. They may look different in each household, but they need to be across the board. If we're going to do, let's say, a behavior chart token economy in one household, and I know that I have to do my whole morning routine independently to get my star, and 5 stars at the end of the week, I get to go to the movies or whatever. I get a reinforcer. I need to have the same expectations at parent B's house to be across the board fluid of, okay, I know what my behavior expectations are. I know how I can earn reinforcers. I know maybe stars get taken away for these behaviors, or I don't get to earn stars when I do these behaviors. And it needs to be across both ends of the settings. And that's really what we focus on in behavior analysis is the environment, because the environment is what is maintaining the behaviors. So if we're going to alter the environment in one setting at parent A's house, we need to alter it in parent B's house as well. So it's got to be a collaborative measure.
So, as a family law attorney, if the parents were willing, and the court system, of course, has to approve anything that we do with children, both parents can sign a settlement agreement about the kids and what's
Hmm.
going to happen, but the judge has to ratify it and approve it because the judge is the person who's ultimately charged with ensuring that that's in the best interest of these children and making that finding. But
Right.
maybe a joint behavior plan
Hmm.
that the parents are willing to follow that supplements the parenting plan, that we will be doing token
Yeah.
economy, that we will be, handling these issues this way and
Hmm.
coming up with a
Visual
plan.
schedules.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe having that plan even sunset, that after 1 year, we'll draw up another plan with the help of
Hmm.
a ABA professional
Hmm.
and update it. Or obviously, we could ask the judge to reserve and to enter one in if we can't come with an agreement, so we could keep things consistent. In Florida, we just had a big change in the law, and now the presumption is equal time sharing.
Hmm.
And so, in the cases I've dealt with children who are on the spectrum,
Hmm.
there's always a fear, it seems like, by the parents or those involved, that too much transition is bad and the 50-50 is too much back and forth. I was
Hmm.
just wondering, do you have any opinions on that, or is it just case by case, or what insights can you give us about that?
I think we can truly prepare a child for anything if we have all parties who are willing to work together and involved. I think that these children are a lot more flexible than we realize that they are. But it starts by us making little changes within their environment before making a huge change like a divorce happening. So, small changes within their classroom, small changes within their morning routine, small changes within their weekly routine. I'm sorry, not COVID. Hurricane Michael was a big eye opener for these parents of you can't control everything. When you are having to choose to run your refrigerator or charge your child's iPad, you're going to run your refrigerator. The child is going to have to be resilient at that point. So I think the more positive you make the situation, I think children are absolutely more resilient than we think that they are, and that they can be flexible with the situation with the right preparation. We were just talking about yesterday, I was with my sister in law, about how that first newborn baby, you're like, oh my goodness, holding it, they're like a fragile egg. And then, when you have that second and third baby, you're like, oh yeah, okay, let me turn you over and change you and, everything. You realize that they're not as fragile as we think that they are with that first baby. So I think the same thing can be said, that I think kids can handle the 50-50, these children. I just think it's all about the preparation. It's all about the presentation of it to the child. And it's all about having the right supports in place to be able to help them.
Yeah. So, as a family law attorney, I think what I'm hearing is the acclimation period, coming into it with a real plan. Maybe it's
Hmm.
not a just rip the Band-Aid off and where all of a sudden it's
Absolutely.
50-50. And then, building that into the parenting plan, or trying to get the parents to agree in the legal framework in place to facilitate that, to ultimately get to what the law is presuming, which is the 50-50. Corinne, it's Autism Awareness Month. So I want to just take a few minutes here at the end and, speak on that. What are some of the key messages that you hope to get out and communicate during this important month?
We need community support. We need, people like you, that you're not in the field of autism, but you're obviously encountering situations with individuals with autism, that affect your practice. So we need collaboration from people like you. We need collaboration from police officers, from doctors, from dentists, from nurses, teachers, paraprofessionals, caregivers. We all need to come together and have more support within the community. It's hard enough finding a doctor you can trust for a neurotypical child. Add behavioral challenges into that. On top of that, you really have to have someone with a heart and a specialty in this field. I know in some cases, our parents have to travel to Georgia or North Alabama or South Florida to find the right person. That shouldn't have to be the case. We should have some type of required training within all of these professions that prepare them for individuals with autism encountering them. Sadly, within the last 2 weeks, we've had 10 children that have passed away from wandering with autism in the US. Maybe people in the community had known that they had autism and had encountered them, they could have intervened and saved a life during that
Yeah.
time. We just hear about situations like that all the time, to the point where the awareness has got to get out there more. 1 in 31 children. I mean, you think about a classroom at a school, they typically have between 28 and 31 children within them. Just
Right.
a regular neurotypical high school classroom, which means that there's one child in each one of those classrooms that's going to be diagnosed with autism. 1 in 8 or 9 that's diagnosed with a developmental disability in general, they're going to need that support. So we've got to get the resources out there. We've got to get the community together in some aspects um, of providing resources and support for these individuals. I know you and I have talked about before the challenges after 22. And that's what I really would like, because early intervention and early diagnosis is such a huge topic within the autism community. Of we've got to get them going with the supports they need. We've got to get them the diagnosis so that we can start getting them those supports. But parents, scary as it is, really need to start thinking at that point, what's going to happen after 22, because
What
that's when
for the
uh,
audience, what do you mean by 22? What occurs after 22 for
so
the audience?
the age of 22, a lot of the services just drop off.
Right.
The supports become very, very slim after 22, sadly. And there's not a lot that goes on with the community by that point. Either they're independent typically, or maybe they're semi independent but still living with parents, or they're in a group home. That's really your only three routes that they can go at that point. There are some cool programs out there with some universities where they have like a buddy living situation, but it's not prevalent enough to really be to provide as much as is needed. Parents, as hard as that is to even think it when you have a 2 or 3 year old that's just been diagnosed, to think about what's going to happen at the age of 22, or even, in the family law realm, what's going to happen after the age of 18. We're putting these plans into place, but what we're going to have to keep getting along.
Well,
We're going to have to keep making these supports.
about a year ago, the family law, the Florida legislature with the family law section played a big role in. We have now an adult child support statute, which is, I have not had a lot of experience with it yet. And it brings its own challenges because while it does create an avenue to get adult child support, and the guardian or another one of the parents or a guardian or someone on behalf of the child can ask for that, we also have to be mindful that we don't want to do anything that may cut off government benefits because of the
Right.
child support. So it brings us challenges and its tricks and nuances. But the family law section in the Florida legislature, in that regard, has made some attempts, some efforts. I
Mhm.
think not just for children on the spectrum, but children who become adults who have any type of medical or psychological issues
Right.
that may not allow them to be really self sufficient. We are making progress there. But what you struck me, was doctors, dentists, nurses who are going to encounter these children in honestly very scary situations, right? Like
Right.
I still flinch when I'm getting an IV put in or getting a root canal. Or is there training out there? Is there some accreditation that's available? I mean, whether it's not even academic, but just how to
Mhm.
how to make these situations a little more palatable, or how to work with or understand what the children are going through? What's available? What resources are out there for us as professionals?
Yeah. So, what all of our technicians that work at our clinic have is a certification called a registered behavior technician. They do a 40-hour training course and then they go and they take an exam and they apply for certification through the behavior analyst certification board. But that 40-hour course is really a crash course in autism, in behavior analysis in general, in how to interact with individuals with autism, how behaviors work. How their minds work, different things like that. And the World Autism Foundation actually provides that course for free. So I really recommend, if people are interested in learning more about autism and about behavior analysis in general and how it may help their practice with strategies like social stories and things like that, then that is a great resource that's out there. Autism Speaks provides a lot of resources, but honestly, you can hop on YouTube and find so many different supports and briefs for these individuals. A lot of the social stories now that I'm doing with my clients are coming from YouTube because they're such a great visual to understand how things are going to work. So just researching really and finding what's out there that is tailored to your practice or to your environment that you're working in to help these individuals. So, and seeing what works or what has worked in other settings as well.
Well, my wife approached me, about 2 weeks ago or so and said, "How would you like to sponsor the Margarita Ball?"
Yeah.
And I thought she was just joking, trying to get me to take her back to the Mexican restaurant.
Right.
But tell us about the Margarita Ball and what that does for your school, the community, and the whole
Yeah.
community that's dealing with these issues.
So the Margarita Ball was a concept that we came up with last year because we realized besides Cinco de Mayo Day, there's not a whole lot that goes on within the community for people to do around that time. We have Bike Week that kind of leads up to that time, but then after Bike Week, there's a little bit of a lull until Memorial Day gets here. So there's not something that people can come together and do really during that time. So we came up with the Margarita Ball because we were like, who doesn't like tacos and dancing and getting together, but also supporting a great cause at the same time. So, any of the events that we do is always just about shining a light on autism, no matter where we are in the community. Because if we can reach one person who didn't know that we were a resource within the community, and they say, and it happens all the time, I have a cousin, brother, friend, grandchild with autism, and they're really just struggling right now. How can I get them in contact with you? Or even they're struggling to find a dentist right now, or, that's hopefully something that we can provide to them. So we're hosting this event May 10th at the Shriners place, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The tacos, silent auction, dancing, drinks, and just a great way for the community to get together and support an awesome cause and
So
raise awareness at the same time.
I've decided we're going to sponsor. I think we've sponsored, and I understand that we sent some swag over and some stress balls, sunglasses, and other things that you guys had requested. If there's other people in the community out there, I would encourage you to get up with Corinne, get up with the Gulf Coast School for Autism, and also sponsor. Corinne, if they want to sponsor, what can they do? Who do they get in touch with? What's the best way to bring us together as a community to make this event successful?
The easiest way is through our Facebook page because we're constantly putting out there what sponsorships are available or all the information for our events and things like that. I really love what we've done recently with showing where the money's going to our students. So, specifically, the Margarita Ball is for us to raise money for a state of the art sensory room at our school. Your wife knows how important that is for these kids. A lot of parents with autism know how important that is for sensory regulation. So they're able to see on there what our room currently looks like and what our goal is for that room, what it's going to be like in the end. And I love that people are able to see what our kids are doing and how our kids are out in the community too through our Facebook page. So that's a great way to find sponsorship opportunities. And we provide so much extra for our students outside of a school setting. We provide an adult autism group for after that 22 age happens, where can they go to come together for social skills and things like that. That's something that we really volunteer our time to do, for the success of these children. We just did a sensory friendly movie where we rented out a movie theater for the kids to watch a movie. And we have awesome supports within the community that have just been really great, like the law firm for wanting to shine a light on autism and just wanting to continue to help us provide these resources to family within the community.
Well, it's something that's near and dear to our heart. Mary obviously worked in that field, for a little while, and something that I think really shaped who she is.
Mhm.
And, on top of it, it's not something I share very often, but, early on as a child, I had some speech issues and it was something I had to work through. And I was, back then what they called a special ed classroom, special needs classroom.
Mhm.
And they were all things I had to work on. Today I'm here on a podcast. I went to law school. I
Yeah.
graduated pretty much, at the very high up in my class. I did very well in the
Yeah.
Florida bar, but I sometimes think that, I'm a religious person. So sometimes I think that God showed me those things early in life to help me with empathy or to help me when I have cases like this better understand. And
Mhm.
that, where you're at one phase in life does not dictate where you'll be at another phase, and that you can
Absolutely.
overcome challenges, and that with the right tools, with the speech therapist making me talk to my fingers so I could
Mhm.
feel what my lips were doing and what the air was doing, those tools, I'm sure maybe some of those tools may be outdated now. Maybe you guys are still using things like that, different
Mhm.
therapists. Those things can be all overcome. So we always want to, support children here on the Florida Family Law Attorney podcast. The law firm always, the Virga law firm is always there to, be there to sponsor, any issues that we can for children and help them.
Yeah.
Corinne, if lawyers out there, family law attorneys out there, or dentists, doctors, nurses, teachers, even
Mhm.
anybody in the community wants to get in touch with you, to ask, can we go to coffee? Can I get some insights on this? Or,
Absolutely.
can you, and it may be people have to get paid for their time. It may even be, can we hire you as a work product expert to help us better
Mhm.
understand what we need to be doing with this family? Are you open to that, or there, or no?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a lifer at this point with helping these kids. This is my heart. This is my compassion. This is my children will be raised within this just like I was. So I am more than happy to shine a light however I can and be a part of helping any family with these individuals. They can get in touch with me at admin@gulfcoastautismclinic.com. That's a direct email address for me, and I can get back with them and see how we can collaborate and see how we can help these children. In my mind, I have to be, I have to be a support for these kids in this community however I can. So if I can find a way where I can fit into whatever challenges professionals may be facing when it comes to children with autism and consulting, then I'm more than happy to help with those situations.
Well, Corinne, my heart goes out to you. Our support goes out to you. And, we hope that the Margarita Ball goes well. And we look forward to the work you're doing in our community. And that you're going to keep doing, and that you're a person that, in my opinion, is a game changer and is trying to change the game in our community by bringing awareness to this, by trying to get us the right expertise in our area. And we're glad to support you in any way we can in your journey and becoming a thought leader on the subject. So we look forward to definitely having you back on the show, because it's my understanding that behavioral issues are not just limited to those issues that are on the spectrum. They could be ADHD or defiance disorders, and we can, definitely talk about those, because I've heard those come up in family law cases too. So if you'll keep
Okay.
donating your time on Saturdays, we'll
Yeah.
gladly take it, and hopefully start educating
Absolutely.
parents and professionals on these topics, and
Yeah.
hopefully, make the world a slightly better place. If you're out there listening, if you could, I'd like to please encourage you to like, share, and subscribe, to the podcast. The more viewership, subscribers we get, the more we get the word out, the more information we can disseminate. And, go check out the Gulf Coast School for Autism's Facebook page, social media, website, where you can support them with a like, a share, or subscribe on any of their social platforms. And we appreciate it. And until next time, you guys have a good weekend, and we'll pick back up next week.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.